Coming to you from his studio in downtown San Francisco, this is the Backstage Bay Area Podcast. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
Welcome, everyone. This is Backstage Bay Area. I'm Steve Roby. Thanks for joining us. My guest today is Bay Area keyboardist, composer, and bandleader whose musical path has taken unexpected and fascinating turns. Greg Rahn has spent decades moving fluently between jazz, blues, fusion, New Orleans piano traditions, Cuban rhythms, and rock, often with the same set. He also lived a parallel creative life outside the spotlight, spending more than 2 decades in Silicon Valley composing and producing audio for the video game industry while quietly building toward a long-delayed return to his own recorded music. That return arrives with Side Hustle, his second album as leader, a widely eclectic, deeply personal project that brings together many of the musical worlds he's inhabited over the past 50 years. Greg Rahn joins us now. Hey, thanks for being here, Greg.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Really happy to be here.
I want to start with something that feels like a defining moment in your story. When you were 17, you had a conversation with the great Chick Corea that reshaped how you thought about learning music and maybe even your life as a musician. He told you not to limit yourself, not to lock into a single lane, but to study whatever interests you. Looking back, how did that advice free you and set you on this journey through so many musical styles?
Well, that was certainly a great moment in my life meeting him, and he suggested that, and I took it to heart. And so he also said, what you should do is seek out teachers who have what you want to learn and study with them. I was about to go into music college, and he was like, that's one way to go, but it may not be the best way. You should really seek out teachers of what you want to learn and study with lots of different people. So that's what I did. I went through my life finding people that had things I wanted to learn how to do, and I studied with them and learned it and moved on that way, moved through life that way.
Yeah, it turned out well.
Thank you.
Well, let's jump ahead to your current project. Your new album called Side Hustle has a long and complicated history. You began working on it around 2017, put it on the shelf in 2018, and returned to it years later under very different circumstances. What originally pulled you away from the project, and what finally brought you back in 2025?
Well, when I was working on the project, I started mixing the songs that I had recorded, and I got so close. I think I got so close to the songs and hearing them over and over again to the point where I started to not like them anymore. So I lost my perspective. And I just thought, I got to put this aside and get away from it, not listen to it for a while, so I can come back to it with fresh ears. And I thought, one thing I can do in the meantime is I can knock out a solo piano album, because that's just solo piano. Easy to get all the personnel together because it's just me playing and record solo piano. So I worked on that and did that, and that ended up taking a whole year. So it really wasn't quick, but I got that one done. That's my solo piano album from 2021 called Rent Party. So I finally finished that, and then I said, okay, I got to revisit these tunes. And when I came back to them, it was just what I had hoped for. I listened to them. I was like, oh, I know exactly what this song needs, We'll just snip out that section and fix that one, change this. And it was very clear to me at that point what had to be done. So went through all the tunes and did that, and then finally got the mixes finalized and everything else done, the mastering and everything, and put the record out.
All right. So in this project, how did losing Drew Zing and Steve Evans change how you heard this music and your urgency to finish it?
Yeah, well, as you might imagine, when somebody passes away, you kind of go, you're reminded that everything has a time limit. All of this has a time limit.
Yeah.
Can't do this forever. Whether it's health issues or, the worst health issue, of course, is if you pass away, there can be all kinds of things that can happen to you in life. We don't know what's going to happen. So that built a fire under my butt and said, you really got to finish. By then I was already on the finishing path, but that just gave me a little extra boost to wrap it up and get it out there. And it became even more special because I had tracks of Drew playing and Steve playing. And those are rare, especially now that they're gone and they can't record anymore. Makes them even more special. When I listen to the tunes, it's just like they're alive again. They just brings them right back. There they are, living through their music and their instruments playing. It's great.
Well, let's get into some of your music now. The first track you chose for us is Brand New Bad Idea, a piece that features both Drew on guitar and Steve Evans on bass. The tune feels joyful, loose, and deeply lived in, yet it carries a lot of emotional weight given the context in which the album was completed. What does this piece represent for you now, and what did Drew and Steve bring to the music that made them such essential collaborators?
So we'll start with Drew. So Drew, I had written the song before I actually met Drew. I wrote the song quite a while ago. I was inspired by Snarky Puppy. I was listening to some Snarky Puppy music, and I really loved how it took me on a journey, right? Their music went through all these different changes and sections and moods. So that inspired me to write this piece, and that's what it does. It goes through lots of different segments. And a lot of the chords that I wrote for this tune were kind of inspired by Steely Dan music. Great harmony of Steely Dan and Donald Fagen's writing and his harmony. So I thought, wow, Drew would be perfect because he was a touring member of the Steely Dan band. Sure enough, he came in and he just tore it up. He just was so comfortable playing through those changes. And as you can hear, he sounds fantastic on the track. So that was a real joy. It was just what I had hoped for, is what he brought to the thing.
Sounds good. Let's listen to it now. This is Brand New Bad Idea by Greg Rahn, and you're listening to Backstage Bay Area. This is Backstage Bay Area. I'm Steve Roby, and we just heard a brand new Bad Idea from Greg Rahn's new album, Side Hustle, which is available now. Greg, I want to pivot to a part of your story, your musical story, that's quite unusual for a jazz musician. For more than 25 years, you put your recording aspirations on hold while working in the video game industry, composing, producing, and shaping audio for some very well-known titles. Aside from paying the bills and raising a family, what did that world teach you about sound, storytelling, and craft? And how did those skills quietly find their way back into your original music on Side Hustle?
Great question. So yeah, those years in the video game industry, that was a surprise, right? That started for me in the mid 90s. And I'd never anticipated it because it didn't exist, right? There was
Yeah.
new computers being built all the time with these new devices called CD-ROMs back then.
Yeah.
And the industry needed content for those. So all these companies were springing up making content for those, and they needed audio people, sound designers, composers, engineers. And so I ended up getting a job at a company that did edutainment titles called Broderbund Software for products that were educational, which was super fun because I had young kids at the time who could use it, and they could actually test the games when I brought the Burns home. So doing that kind of work, your day consisted of everything from composing music and producing music to casting voice talent, recording voice talent, mixing your songs. All aspects of audio were part of the job. So you're honing your craft every day while you're working. And so those years really were a great training ground for me to learn how to mix lots of different styles of music. Because the other thing about games is there's different genres and styles that are needed based on what the theme of the game is.
Sure.
So it's completely very diverse.
We live in the Spotify era, let's call it, where musicians really don't make any money on Spotify, but they have to keep up their chops musically, and, touring's an option, but you found a viable option that's still relevant these days. Would you like to comment on that and kind of, I guess, for advice for all musicians that just don't get stuck on putting album after album after album out, find other diversity to make money in this industry?
Our music, and as musicians, there's a whole ecosystem, right? You learn about sound and sound engineering as a byproduct of being a musician.
Right.
You learn how to make things sound good. You may dive into mixing, or you may dive into running your sound live, and you learn all about that by doing it.
Yeah.
And then those are all skills that you can farm out, right? You can also teach. You can help students with composition, learning instruments. And then another day you could show up and supply a sound reinforcement PA system for some public event somewhere.
Right. It seems like an endless cycle for musicians trying to get their music out, chasing the dollar by touring. So there's got to be other options, and I'm glad you found some of those and told our listeners about them. Let's move on to the second track you wanted to focus on. It's called Jam Night, which again features Drew and Steve. What were you aiming for with this piece, and how does it reflect the kind of musical community you've built here in the Bay Area?
Yeah, so Jam Night, as everybody knows, or most people know, musicians anyway, is a night where people go and they are allowed to sit in and play in front of people, and they call it a jam. It's a wonderful thing, and everybody gets to stretch out, and you also get the chance to play with lots of different musicians that you may not know or may never have played with before. So this piece went through a few different sections, and there's different solos from guitar, from piano, from synthesizer, and so forth. And so I named it afterwards. It was like, this really just feels like a jam. It feels like we're jamming. And so I named it Jam Night.
All right.
Those kind of moments.
Easy peasy. Let's give it a listen now. This is Jam Night by Greg Rahn from his album Side Hustle. We'll be back right after this to talk about his upcoming show in Vallejo. That was Jam Night from Greg Rahn's album Side Hustle. Greg, let's talk about your upcoming show in Vallejo. You're celebrating the release of this album with an all-star show at the Empress Theater in Vallejo. This isn't just a CD release party. It's a gathering of musicians from the different worlds you've moved through, including Juan Escovedo, Ruben Brunt, Daryl Einders, and many others. When you look at this lineup, what kind of night are you hoping to create?
Well, as we talked about already, the album is very diverse, right? There's lots of different influences in there. So I'm trying to, of course, recreate most of the tracks on the album. We're going to play them live. And so I need a diverse set of musicians to pull it off. You know, my core band is Frank Acosta on guitar, Daryl Einders on bass, Randy Hayes on drums. And then I brought in Chris Kane. He's a blues guitarist that I work with. I've toured with him and played with him for many, many years. And he's at the top of his game, fantastic blues guitarist. And so he's going to jump in on some of the blues tunes, and we're going to do a few of his tunes as well. And then for the Latin side of things, I have a few tunes that are inspired by Latin jazz. And I got Juan Escovedo from the famous Escovedo family. He'll be playing percussion with us. That's going to be really fun. And just yesterday, I added a horn player, Luke Curley. He'll be joining us on the New Orleans style stuff, playing tuba and trombone.
Jeez. Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great night of music.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Well, let me remind our listeners, Greg Rahn's album release show for Side Hustle takes place on Friday, February 6th at 8 p.m. at the Empress Theater in Vallejo. For tickets and venue information, visit empresstheater.org. And a direct link will be in the podcast show notes, so you can just click and find tickets. Hey, Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Backstage Bay Area will be right back.
Are you a jazz musician preparing for a run in San Francisco? The Backstage Bay Area podcast wants to help tell your story. We are currently filling our guest lineup with the artists keeping the jazz scene alive. If you have dates booked at a local club or concert hall, let's get you on the mic to discuss your latest work. Connect with us directly. Send an email to backstage.sfbay@gmail.com. Just let us know when you'll be playing in San Francisco. That's backstage.sfbay@gmail.com.
Backstage Bay Area is dedicated to keeping jazz alive in the 415 by spotlighting the artists, presenters, and venues that sustain this music. The most meaningful way to support local jazz is simple. Show up, buy a ticket, and experience the music live. Visit BackstageBayArea.com and explore our upcoming concerts section, featuring both a weekly guide and a weekend guide to jazz shows across the region, plus the latest concert news. Thank you for keeping jazz alive in the 415.
You've been listening to the Backstage Bay Area podcast. Visit us on the web at BackstageBayArea.com. And don't forget to keep jazz alive in the 415.